Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose, and I guess it's just going to be a common thing to talk about Xbox games on PlayStation and Nintendo consoles, or PlayStation games on Xbox and Nintendo consoles. If you haven't noticed here yet, Nintendo are really the ones that won the console war, but we do have a couple more big games to talk about today that are seemingly going to make that jump over to rival consoles, and these are actually brand new, yet-to-release titles from Xbox. Now, we also have a Sony lawsuit to talk about today because they are furious about this specific game. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with a brand new Spongebob game. This comes from Bill Coon, which continues to be one of the most accurate leakers online, and he claimed that there will be a new Spongebob reveal within the next 15 days. Now, he's unsure if this is going to happen at the widely rumored Nintendo Direct later this week, but it does kind of feel like it would be a nice fit to be there, and it will launch for the Nintendo Switch 2, as well as the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series, and PC, allegedly on November 18th for $40. So this will be a budget title, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be a small throwaway game like last year's Patrick Star Adventure. $40 actually fits right in line with Purple Lamp's previous 3D platformers, games like SpongeBob the Cosmic Shake, and I actually really enjoyed that specific game. For that matter, I think that the SpongeBob 3D platforming series is widely underrated. I think that if you like the 3D platforming genre, and if you like SpongeBob, or if you grew up with the series, then these are definitely games worth playing. I think they're very fun, solid platformers with that classic SpongeBob comedy. Now, we also got an update for Oblivion Remastered. It's been out for a few months by this point, and apparently it's already reached 9 million players, which once again just kind of shows you the magnitude of which the Elder Scrolls series still holds to this day. It is still a massive franchise, and the Elder Scrolls 6 is going to break the internet when it eventually releases. The question is just how long is it going to be before we get that game? Now, to be completely fair here, though, Oblivion did launch into Game Pass, so it's hard to say how many units it actually sold, but even still, 9 million players in just a few short months, really without any kind of advertising. This was a shadow launch, so I think that speaks volumes about how big this series is. The only thing is that it still needs a physical release. That could actually push some additional units if they ever decide to do that, but in the meantime, congrats to Bethesda and also to Xbox, considering they paid a lot of money to own games just like this. Oh, and Xbox is going to be at Gamescom this year, which includes a Hollow Knight Silksong sighting. We're all still waiting for that official release date, but I actually feel very confident that it will be out by the end of 2025. Now, who knows, that might come back to bite me, but Team Cherry has echoed that plan various different times already, and now it's also going to be a part of Xbox's Gamescom's booth. Keep in mind that it is a day one Xbox Game Pass title, so, Xbox is going to advertise it quite a bit when it eventually nears its release, which hopefully this is a good sign if anything else. In the meantime, though, Xbox is going to use it as one of the games to showcase the ROG Xbox Ally, which also includes other games like Roblox, Sea of Thieves, and Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3+4. So not only are we going to get first-hand impressions for Hollow Knight Silksong, and hopefully a release date, cross my fingers for that, but we should also hear a lot more about the Xbox ROG Ally come Gamescom. It seems like that will be a big focus of theirs for this year. Now, a few other games that they will have at their booth, though, includes Grounded 2, Ninja Gaiden 4, really excited to see more on that one, Super Meat Boy 3D, which, by the way, that game is looking absolutely incredible. There's a new overview of it online. I'll go and post some footage on screen, but I'm actually really excited about this game. It's shaping up to be a legitimate sequel. Continuing down this list, though, a few other interesting games at their booth includes Metal Gear Solid Delta, Onimusha The Way of the Sword, Borderlands 4, Chronos The New Dawn, as well as several other games. I will go and include a screenshot here so you can kind of get an idea of what will be there, but it seems like they will have a big booth this year, and that's really what Gamescom is all about. It's the biggest showcase specifically for fans. It's not just about game reveals, but it's also about allowing fans to come in and test some of those upcoming games out a bit early. All of this will happen between August 20th and August 24th. Now, speaking of Xbox, let's just go and get into some of the big news here. Obviously, and we've talked a lot about this, but gaming is changing a lot. And it's really starting to feel like the console wars are either over, or I guess a better way to phrase it is that it's been greatly diminished. Last week, we talked about PlayStation and how they're potentially going to port some of their games to Xbox and Nintendo. And now here we are just a few days later. And now we're going to talk about how Xbox is potentially planning to launch two pretty major games on PlayStation, both of which have yet to release, being State of Decay 3 and Gears of War E-Day. This was discovered from some online resumes from people who actually worked on these games. It was mentioned that both State of Decay 3 and Gears of War E-Day are targeting Xbox Series consoles, PC, and even the PlayStation 5. Now, it is important to keep in mind that there are no timelines included in these resumes, so it is debatable if this includes a day one launch for the PlayStation 5 or if they're instead preparing for an eventual staggered release down the road. My guess is that they would likely be staggered, or at least when it comes to Gears, just because Xbox, they still do seem to believe in some form of exclusivity. They've shown that with some of their recent releases as an example. But what I will say is that no matter if it's day one or if it's day 180, it's really no longer a surprise to hear that Microsoft is at the very least considering a PlayStation 5 version for some of their upcoming games. Xbox has found a lot of success on PlayStation, and so much so that Forza Horizon 5 is allegedly the best-selling game for the PlayStation 5 for the entirety of 2025, and that's even more impressive when you start to consider that it's a staggered release by several years. We also know that Sea of Thieves and Grounded had a lot of success on PlayStation last year. And even if you look at the monthly charts, Xbox games, which includes Activision and Bethesda, seems to top the PlayStation charts quite often. So I guarantee you that Microsoft's upper management, they're probably looking at those results and they're likely asking Team Xbox, why exactly are we not doing this type of stuff more often? From their point of view, they're saying, hey, look at all the money that we're leaving on the table by keeping these games as Xbox exclusives. And that's really what these companies care about. It's always about the money first and foremost. And if they can find more ways to make more money, well, that's what they're going to do. So yeah, Microsoft is probably putting a lot of pressure on Team Xbox to ramp up their multi-platform efforts, given their success that they've already had on the PlayStation 5. And that could potentially include upcoming games that have yet to release. I want to hear some predictions from you all, though. If Xbox actually ports these games to the PlayStation 5, do you think that'll be on day one, or do you instead think that it's going to be staggered? And if so, by how long? Now, one more thing before we go, because Sony decided to officially move forward with a lawsuit against Light of Motirum and Tencent. Now, we talked about this game late last year, and I said back then that Sony was going to be furious about this game. And yeah, apparently they absolutely are. Now, there was actually some pushback in the comments about me saying that back then, but I mean, look at this game. It's easy to see that Sony might take some issue with this game because, there's a difference between being inspired by something and then flat out copying it. Now, I'll let you be the judge of what you think this game is, but in Sony's eyes, they look at Light of Motirum and they believe that they took that inspiration too far to possibly confuse players into playing what they might believe is a Horizon game. I mean, even if you look at the cover art itself, it looks almost identical to Horizon. I mean, look at this. They both have a red-headed female protagonist that are holding bows in their hands. You got the robotic dinosaurs in the distance, and each are looking into the beyond of what appears to be a big open-world game. If you showed this cover art to somebody that's not in the know, and let's say they are big fans of the Horizon series, well, they might buy this game believing that it is a Horizon game. And that's kind of what Sony is saying here. The art design and the characters, they are strikingly similar. And this does kind of remind me of the Power World Nintendo lawsuit. But to me, and this is only my opinion, but I feel like this is a much more egregious case and much more blatant. Now, that's not to say that Light of Motiran plays exactly like Horizon, and that's something that Tencent can maybe push back against a bit. You know, they can claim that it's different from a gameplay standpoint, but Sony does believe that it's a knockoff to confuse customers into buying it, and they even claim that they declined an offer from Tencent last year to collaborate on a Horizon game together. So, with that information, you almost have to kind of wonder if this was the game that Tencent wanted to collaborate with Sony. I mean, if that turns out to be true, then that would be a pretty bad look for Tencent, but even still, I do expect there to be differing opinions about this. So I'm going to go and ask you all, do you think that Sony is in the right for filing a lawsuit against Tencent, or do you instead think that it's okay to be this similar to another game? Let me hear in the comments below. Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.